Next, we have Mr. So, talking from the perspective of a corporate and risk taker. Mr. So, please.
Today, my presentation will roughly be into three parts. The first part would be for me to share with you some broad considerations when venturing abroad. Secondly, I would like to show you a little bit of who the company, who I represent, the company Kingsmen, and our journey in the last 35 years since we started in 1976. And thirdly, any lessons learned. If I were to start all over again, is there something else that I would do differently? So first of all, venturing into the emerging market. Obviously, we have to look at the size of the market, and secondly, whether there's a growth potential. Sometimes, very often these days, educated people would all go look at the data from all the different agencies. But in our case, we actually just went on good feel, or gut feel. And thirdly, we have to consider, generally speaking, for any business, the readiness of the market. Going there too early is as bad as going there when everybody is already in. So the market, whether the market is ready for that particular product, that really requires more deep research. You know, I remember Kentucky Fried Chicken went to Thailand the first round in the 80s. They actually didn't succeed, and then went out for a while, and then they went back a second time and adapt to the local needs. Then of course our own resources. You know, a lot of people think that it's easy when we go to a third world country. To me, there's no free lunch. So we have to be ready ourselves, our own resources, before we go. Challenges challenges of investing in an emerging market. That's a market readiness, as I said earlier. Local rules and regulations and practices. You will notice that what we get, what we do, what we see is what we get here in Singapore. But in larger countries, even China, different cities have different practices. Between Beijing and Shanghai, they have different tax regimes. They have their sales tax at different level. And also, manufacturing will be taxed at a different rate from those in sales marketing. And they have different forms of taxes. So before you go register, you've got to get to know all these local practices. And of course, resources, manpower, infrastructure and finance. Managing expectations, both from our expectation of the local needs of the employees as well as the other way around. So we are so used to multitasking, we are so used to one person taking initiatives. But in some countries, even as close as our neighbors around us, you know, whether it's Indonesia, Thailand, or even Malaysia, somehow your management has to be a little bit more proactive. And also, in the case of China, you know, if if you don't give them sufficient instruction, they can get very creative. So, and of course, the reserve firepower. Many people, many companies think that you have X dollars is sufficient, but you get lots of surprises. In the case of our first venture overseas in 1982 in Malaysia, ladies and gentlemen, it took us 7 years to make our first dollar. We were making money. But we were not smart enough to deal with the right clients. We were making money every year, but there were lots of bad debts. By the way, up to today, on average, we still get more bad debts in Malaysia than in Singapore. So that's one of the challenges of dealing with overseas, where you really need to have reserve resources, especially financials. But advantages of operating in a emerging market. First, to market advantages, that's very obvious, you know. But again, cost is an advantage because in those countries it's a lot lower cost. Competition is obviously lesser, but they learn very fast. Let me tell you that among the Chinese, among the Vietnamese, they learn very fast and they come compete with you actually. So consider the following criteria before setting up overseas offices. Home base must be strong. That has always been my belief. I was talking to our friend Ricky Tan from World. He was over lunch. He was complaining how tough it is in Singapore that he no longer operates here. But I said, you probably make money from Singapore first before you set up overseas. And it was true, of course, you know, if you run a business, it's always evolving. Eventually, overseas business can make up a bigger turnover than your local. As in our case, now it's about 50-50 already. But overseas is definitely growing larger because our domestic market is only one city-state. Once you establish in some of the bigger countries, you get a chance to open more than one office. And of course, as I said earlier, resources, especially manpower and finance. And you have to know what's your differentiation, what's your unique selling point. And continually the locals will improve, they will copy and do better than you. Can you continually be a leader in the market? Understand local laws and practices, as I said, adapt to local needs while pushing the envelope. Now, I have, during our years of operating overseas and my visits to all the different offices, some Singaporeans, when they get sent overseas, senior ones, or even those local ones who we employ them from overseas or as a partner, some will continue improving, some just get stuck. When they get stuck, the locals will overtake you. But we as a foreign base from Singapore, when we start overseas, we will continue to make a differentiation and do not just simply adapt totally. And of course, doing that is via continuous training and skills upgrading. Within Kingsmen, we spend a lot of resources on training, on having upgrading of skills, and our own internal seminar. We even have internal, in the group, competition for designs once a year, and we have been doing that in the last 15 years or so. So a lot of resources are put for continuous training and upgrading, and also getting into new related businesses. I will show you a little bit later. So about a brief introduction of Kingsmen. We are a creative organization. We do research and design, production and project management. It's an end-to-end solution, they call it. And of course, we provide alternative marketing services. What is alternative marketing services? It is today, in the old days, it's always about advertising and then PR, new media and old media. I mean, those TV, radio, and then there's a print media. But alternative media, we combine both online and offline. So we continue evolving. This unit is already 7 years. It's growing, sorry. We are 35 years old, started in 1976, listed 8 years ago. Group revenue is 360 million. We started with 7 people. Today we are 1,002 or more in the group, with a few thousand workers and 18 offices. So this is where we are, all over Asia, and one in Dubai. We choose to be Asian-centric in my generation, simply because in our business, even though we are already world-class, I think if we go to the West, provided we have a lot of firepower, provided we have the recognition from the clients who use our services that Asians are as good as them. Well, it's the clients who pay us. So we choose to stay in the region, and we have been growing every single year. So this is our production in Malaysia, which is 200,000 we do for export all over Europe and America, Japan, and so on. Some of our regional presence. Every office that we have is with designers, project management, and all. It's just a few offices. We don't believe in just a small rep office, except the one in Shenzhen, actually, and Macau. The rest are all full services with production in 10 of them. So one of the areas of business is retail interiors. We are probably doing more than anybody else. The building that you see, this whole building is practically all done by us. You have also Uniqlo, and we do over 10% of what you see at Marina Bay Sands, Chanel, Tiffany. And very quickly, the World Expo, that's on exhibitions, and then we do museums and theme parks. And this one is a pretty new business that we started with Universal Studio. It gave us $100 million. We are currently doing for Disney in Hong Kong, and we already got a first contract for Disney in Shanghai. So that's a new team that's growing very quickly, and we even export the Shrek Castle to LA. So next, alternative marketing. This is what I mean, they have fun. Their friends take pictures of them, upload it in the YouTube, and then it can go viral. We do flash dance, flash mob rather, and that's a launch where, you know, it's a teaser launch for Volkswagen. Okay, our clientele focus, we are pretty focused on mid to high end retail, where we manufacture one-off or in multiples for export. Corporate clients, targeted business sectors. We do not go into every sector. Targeted means like oil and gas, luxury goods, the motor industry, telco, and so on, and aerospace especially. So it's multiple sectors, but still it's all on commercial. We don't do homes at all. So any lessons from the last 30 years? We are all, my partner and I, none of us is trained like most of you here who are accountants and financial based. We are trained in design and we are trained in marketing communication. So I wish I could be more scientific and system to track expenses and costings and the billings, you know. And I wish someone would have taught me that, you know, the table that you are sitting down, you can track how much it costs per day. And don't undersell, you know, which means that, you know, you go and sell it too cheaply. To send more trained personnel when venturing abroad, yeah, definitely the training could have started earlier. You know, we could have invested in training much earlier. Now we have formal courses where we train our people in different subjects, and we are still increasing. One of the subjects, ladies and gentlemen, I want to share with you is law and knowing your rights. Because every company, every staff or senior staff ought to know the law. And of course, finance. We have a course, finance for non-financial people. And stronger financial strength would have certainly helped, you know. We would have grown even faster, I suppose. Now, our presence in emerging market, I'm going to share with you, I think maybe 7, but when I look at the, MSCI or, yeah, MSCI reading, the whole list, actually, we are there, except Philippines. So let me share with you, and 2 of them missing. The first one is Malaysia, it's not there. But this morning, before coming here, when I opened up, I saw the MSCI chart showing Malaysia. But maybe it's debatable whether it is still called an emerging market. So I mentioned Malaysia, we started in 1982. It's not in the list. But anyway, Thailand is the next one, 83. Everyone has a story to tell. Like I say, Thailand is the only country up to now that the kind of investment that we put in, technically we still don't get a return yet. We get from the corporate fees and so on, of course, but it has a long history. So it's that long, 20 years. And directly, but of course, from the intrinsic value and the joint ventures, we are doing big jobs over there now, like Uniqlo we did. We have done 3 big stores there and many more, especially these 2 years. But sometimes it begins to pay on jobs like that. But direct investment, actual money put in, no money returned yet. Indonesia, We lost a lot of money when during the Asian economic crisis, lost close to $1 million. But we restarted. We never ran away, but we reorganized and put in more resources. And in the last 4 or 5 years, it's very good. So we are now reaping the profits, not reaping, but now it's having good returns now since our investment, making back all the losses. And Vietnam has been pretty good with us. You know, even during the last 2-3 years was a little bit of a roller coaster, but overall it's been very good. It's tough though when we started 1992 because over the years the rules changes from rep office to a full office, and you're just not sure whether it's still more changes and whether we are still allowed to operate there or not. You know, I heard over lunch again that somebody was operating in Vietnam for 5 years, and then suddenly they say, sorry, your license is not valid for providing this kind of services. So that's the challenges of operating overseas. India again, India again is very tricky, very, very tricky. So you just have to handle it according to your partner's needs, because they all ask for transfer of knowledge, ask for transfer of technical know-how all the time. So China is a lot better these days than anywhere else, surprisingly. People talk about Guanxi, I mean, the connotation is as if you have to bribe everybody to do business. It's not true at all. It is absolutely not true. If you are good in what you are doing, you can do it well. But like I say, you know, the Chinese are so willing to work hard. They are so competitive. You know, they'll take on you in no time. So if you have something to offer, yes, definitely China is the place to go. And Taiwan. In 2001, in between we actually have Seoul in 1998 also. Seoul is also listed. Before this is Seoul. Seoul is also listed as an emerging market. We started in 1998, but I'm not sure whether Seoul, in my personal context, whether it can be considered an emerging market. I'm going to talk to Seoul, even though it's not here. Seoul is, if you go to Korea, it's very, very different culture from if you work with the Japanese or work with the Chinese. Because they themselves are willing to work very hard, they learn very, very fast. And if you are not good enough, don't go there. You know, that's why they come into. They are like a first world now. I don't see how you can consider Korea to be emerging market. You know, really, they are so world class now. Anyway, Taiwan is very interesting. For those who have not been there in the recent 2-3 years, you should consider, because of the influx of Chinese tourists and the warmer relationship, it's really taken off, and it's very vibrant. In fact, you think compared to China, it's so small, but it's how many times bigger than Singapore. So it is a good place to go. And then, of course, UAE, roller coaster again, yeah. We make a lot of money in the earlier few years. Then we lost some money 2 years ago. Last year was okay. And I think we'll continue operating there very well in the long run, because we're there to stay. Okay, the other thing is I'd like to share with you is take advantage of IE Singapore's very good support of local entrepreneurs venturing abroad. I'm going to share with you what's happened, what we have experienced in the last 30 years. I'm a fan of IE Singapore, not because the folks are here. I've been telling people because before we started earlier than IE. See, IE started maybe 33 years ago or 34, right? Yeah, we are 35, we are 36 years now. So, so since they have started, they have been a great help to everyone in commercial side, in private sector, I mean. So there are myriad of assistants. We have followed them to various countries in the early days, and they have actually enabled us to have better tax incentive for double tax deduction, of course, and also in Vietnam and in the Middle East, we got some tax credits. So you got to make money and you don't pay tax for that X dollars for a certain number of years. But there's a limit, like $200,000, which is still a good amount. Approach them for relevant contacts of target markets, but more importantly, don't just listen to them. Make a few visits yourself, and check with different parties, because the IE officers are so busy, right? I mean, they have to deal with too many people. I always say that they are overworked. So government support. Now, IE Singapore, EDB. I know by and large over here, ASME, at one time they had a program called Promising Local Enterprises, and they do help us. We were one of those that grew big enough that in the 1990s they did support us. Singapore Tourism Board, I must acknowledge that in our internationalization quest, or in doing work overseas, same as IE Singapore, I badger them quite a bit and say, hey, look, if you don't give Singapore companies a chance, they will never grow. So they did continue to use us quite a bit.